Hi, I'm Anand Jain and this is my Vac Project. Starting off with situation 3 from module 1, which talks about the family history. The first question is, what are the subjects of jokes in your family? Some subjects of jokes in my family are like, as my father is from Uttar Pradesh, so he has a certain accent and a language that he sometimes speaks to entertain all of us, and that is a joke we all make of him, and it's very funny. Furthermore, what we do is we make fun of our relatives and acting and mimicking them after every family function and a gathering. And we do this on a while on a cup of tea or a coffee in the evening with my mom, dad, and my younger brother. The second question talks about was conflicts dealt with indirectly or directly. So most of the times it depends on the situation and how a situation can be handled in different ways. So yeah, but majorly keeping the factors such as personal relationships and affiliations and the other relationships of the family. Majority of the conflicts are held indirectly. Talking about the third question, who made the major decisions in your family, mother, father, both, or other family members? Majority of the decisions are made by my father, but a whole lot of that decision is backed up by my mother and my mother's advice. So I would say all the decisions are taken by both of them, but the final decision is conveyed by my father towards the family. Also, going on, if you had siblings of opposition sex, did you notice different child rearing practices being acted out? What are those differences? So if I had although I have a younger brother, but if I had if I had a sibling with the opposite sex, some differences that I would notice being acted out are like my parents would be much humble and protective and soft spoken towards my sibling, but generally I see no difference in the disciplinary actions set by our parents for ourselves, and that disciplinary actions include the eating habits, the routine, and how we are studying, the basic things that are said by the parents. I see no difference in them, and I also think that they would want equal and positive outcomes for both of us. Was competition or cooperation stressed? So competition, as I said in the earlier question, both of our parents would want the positive outcome for me, and competition would be equal for both, as I mentioned, and same goes for the cooperation. How did you learn about the religious matters? So, being very proud and positive about my religion, we were always taught about the history of a religion. For example, like I belong to the Jain religion, and we were always taught how many Tirthankaras and the Mahaviras are there in our religion. Things like that were majorly told by my grandmother and my mother, and also while growing up and visiting the religious sites, we got to know a lot more about our religion. And the latest memory that I remember is my mom telling me stories about the Mahavir Bhagwan while we were on a road trip. So that is how we gauge on and get to know about our religion. How were you rewarded? Next question, how were you rewarded? So, being from a core business family, every reward has been like a trade for me, where I had to fulfill a goal or a challenge set by my parents, and in exchange, I got whatever I wanted. For example, like it can be as simple as scoring good marks in exams. And one time I remember my father told me that you have already made it to the inter-school team, and if you make it to the semi-nationals, I'll get you whatever you want. So that is an example of how. Next question, how were you punished? So there's no such thing getting a punishment in our family. Like if you make a mistake or do something that you weren't supposed to do, that is when you will have to handle the anger of the family members for a day or two. But the next thing you know is them telling you and explaining you how to not repeat your mistake again, and how to improve on that. The next situation that I'm talking about is situation 1, which is of Sunita and David. Question number one is, what are some challenges of this intercultural marriage because of the cultural differences of India and the USA? Give examples. So I would say communication style is one of them. Sunita and David may have different communication styles, which were influenced by their cultural background. The next would be values and beliefs. There is a lot of difference in the values and beliefs that are followed in India and the USA. There are a lot of cultural norms that are that are different in various aspects of the life, which can be marriage, parenting, gender roles. For example, attitude towards the gender equality, marriage arrangements, and parenting practices may be different between the two cultures, which can lead to conflicts and tension within the family. The next one is, what language, identity, and cultural issues will their children face both within themselves and in the society? The language barrier, the language issues that they may face is like growing up in an environment where half of his family is English speaking and half is Indian. And also growing in the US, the children may struggle to learn or maintain the Sunita's first language, which could create challenge in communicating within the family itself. Talking about identity, the children may experience a sense of cultural ambiguity and identity confusion as they navigate between the Indian heritage and the American heritage. Coming on to the cultural adaptation, the children may encounter cultural differences. Cultural differences can be seen in many ways, which could be eating habits, which could be parenting habits, and also the way of education. And coming on to the next question, Sunita's parents and two aunts and uncles are visiting them in the USA for a month. What kind of issues do you think Sunita's as well as David's family will face? I think language barrier is a big thing that they will face. Sunita's parents and relative might face a challenge in communicating with David and his family, and same goes for David. Also, many of their views on the cultural background may differ, which can also create a misunderstanding between them. So next we're going to move on to model 2, in which I'm going to talk about the situation 2, which involves David Thorne, who was sent to Mexico by his employer, where his contact person Santiago Guzman invited David to a dinner party at a Friday night on 8 p.m. But David arrived a few minutes before 8 so he could make a good impression, only to find out that Santiago and his wife was still dressing and hadn't even begun the preparation to receive guests. So what went wrong? According to me, there is a discrepancy in the cultural interpretations of time and punctuality here, which led to misunderstandings between Thorne and Guzman. David was influenced by his culture and the norms of his home country, which likely interpreted Santiago's invitation to the dinner party as a fixed schedule. Expecting it to start promptly around 8, David arrived a few minutes early, only with well intention and to leave a good impression, only to find Santiago and his wife still preparing for the event. While David's punctuality was well intentioned and aligned with his cultural norms, Santiago's approach was more relaxed towards the timings, which clashed with David's expectations. So next we're moving on to situation number 1, which talks about AD, who has been teaching at the University of California for about 5 years. And in this time period, AD had learned to determine the mood of the students by determining the facial expressions, body posture, and she could determine if the student is not understanding anything, if he's bored, if he's sleepy, or anything like that. With this knowledge, AD could continuously adjust the way she lectured. But however, after moving to the new position in Japanese university, she discovered that the students exhibited very few, if any, facial expressions and sat quietly at the desk. So some things that AD could do in this situation to measure the students' interest can be, she can bring in interactive questioning. AD can periodically pause during the lecture to ask questions directly to the students, instead of relying solely on non-verbal cues. She can directly engage with the students by asking to provide feedback and share their thoughts and answer the questions related to the material she's teaching about. Next, she can incorporate group discussions. Incorporating group discussions or activities in her lectures would increase a lot of active participation of the students, and also she would get a lot more expressions and feedback from the students. She can also divide the class into groups and give them tasks to carry out regarding the material she's teaching about. Also, feedback mechanism can be incorporated. AD can implement a feedback mechanism such as anonymous surveys that would bring the attention level of the students much higher than it was before.